Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about ancient Egypt. I'm going to be talking about some of his really perplexing race planning I've noticed. And this is also my formal request to become Ammo Racing's next racing manager or race planner. That sort of thing. No, I'm joking. Although I think I'd do a better job than the current person. Possibly. Because I've played starters orders a lot in my life, so that's my background, starters orders 7. But yeah, I'm going to talk about this horse a bit. He's very interesting. He's by Frankel. He's a spitting image of his father. And he's running this weekend in the Christophe Clement Stakes over a mile and a half in America, which seems like a good race for him. He's the favourite, and I have backed him as well because I just think form-wise he's way above the other horses in the race. But we'll just start off talking about his career a little bit. Obviously, he was an okay 2-year-old. I think he was quite colty. He had a few temperamental problems. But, did enough. He won 2 races. And then he comes back out as a 3-year-old. And, if you look at his pedigree being by Frankel out of Oasis Dream, you think, 3-year-olds, that's going to be his year. Going to, further distances, 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles. And yeah, he had his first run this year at Newmarket in that listed race. And he was the second stringer of the 2 Ammo horses, obviously, with Rowan Scott riding, and David Egan was on another horse. I forget who it was, but he won really well that day. He was straight to the front, and he led the whole way. He looked very good. Obviously, I went to the Derby after that, and he was trucking into the race. I thought Charlie Johnston after the race said that he looked like he was going to win at maybe the 600 meter mark, but obviously that really terrible track, he kind of bottomed out a bit. He needs fast ground, this horse. That's what we've kind of realised with him after that performance. Obviously, after Epsom, he went to Ascot, King Edward Stakes, Group 2, 1.5 miles. A proper staying test, for the 3-year-olds. It's a hard race. Obviously, went to war with Causeway. They were like 6 lengths ahead of the rest of the horses, but he was so tough that day, and I think that really sort of showed his character to the general public of this horse. Like, he's a really tough horse. He will get into a battle. And I think he's got that toughness that a lot of horses don't have, Ancient Egypt. That's what I think. Obviously, that was shown again in his last start in the Grand Prix de Paris. Obviously, 1.5 miles at Longchamp, another really hard race on these 3-year-olds, especially on him who's on his 4th run and already had a war at Ascot and a tough run at Epsom. So it was always going to be a hard race for him, and I think people were a bit shocked to see him back up into that race. I thought, the horse probably deserved a break. Could come back in the race like the Voltiger at York next week, Group 2. So I think some of us were a bit surprised to see him come back at Longchamp. And he almost won. Like, he was home, and then obviously Maltese Cross, who is a really good horse, he came and beat him by a head. So he's had 2 really close runs, almost winning these big races, but, just not quite getting there, being beaten by good horses. Although I don't know how good Causeway is because he didn't run very well in Longchamp in that race. So it's interesting to see how this form sort of stacks up. But yeah, he's obviously running in America this weekend, which I don't really know about. Like, obviously, with Ammo Racing, they're very centered around Group 1s and black type racing. And especially with a horse like him, I think the goal is just to get a Group 1 with him. I think, for his stallion career, they just want to get that Group 1. They were so close last start. So they're going to go and try and win an easy Group 1, or comparatively easy. It's not an easy race, but compared to these European races where you're going to have to race against Ballydoyle, I was going to say Godolphin, but they haven't really been firing this year, but Juddmonte, those factions. So he's going the easy route, and I think honestly with this horse, we won't see him in Europe again this year. I'd say they're going to run in the Christophe Clement Stakes, formerly known as the Sword Dancer. And then there's a race at the end of September at Belmont. It's called the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, which is 1.5 miles. It's a Group 1. It's a race that Rebels Romance won last year, and I could see with this horse they're going to try and just win a few Group 1s with him, get them for his stallion career. But it's a bit underwhelming. I thought I think this horse should have stayed in Europe. I think they should have gone back to 1.25 miles with him, which they spoke about doing after Epsom, but obviously didn't come to fruition. Although he's ran very credibly over 1.5 miles, but I just feel like there's a bit of they should have spelled this horse and then they should have kept him in Europe. That's what I seriously think about him. But now what I think they're going to do is obviously these American races. There's a Group 1 in Canada called the Canadian International over 1.5 miles. I think Salawi won it last year. It's quite a weak Group 1. I could see them going for that race because obviously it'll probably be on good ground. He needs fast ground, this horse. And then all roads lead to the Breeders' Cup Turf at the end of the year, which is such a hard race, and he won't win because I think Benvenuto Cellini is probably the number one horse for that race. Obviously, coming third in the King George. I think he's nailed on for that race. I think he's just absolutely built for it, being out of a Group 1 winner in America. Although she ran over a mile, that horse is built for the Breeders' Cup Turf. But I'm going a bit off topic there. But Ancient Egypt, he could still hold his own in a race like that. But I just feel like they should have spelled him after Longchamp, or even after Ascot. He had such a hard run at Epsom and then hard run at Ascot, and then as I said before, his toughness really just showed in the Grand Prix de Paris last start. So I think they should have given him a bit of a freshen up. Then they should have gone to York in the Voltigeur. Then maybe a Champion Stakes or something. I've actually got a note here, which is what I think they should have done. They should have, after Ascot, they should have gone back to a mile and a quarter. They should have gone to the York Stakes, the Group 2. I think it's on the same weekend as King George weekend. It's it's not a weak race, but it's just a nice sort of Group 2 over a mile and a quarter, which I think they should have gone with. And I think if he did well there, they could have pushed on to an Irish Champion Stakes and then a Champion Stakes. And that was if he was good at a mile and a quarter and could carry that level of class at a shorter trip, which I think is a good chance of doing. But instead they've gone mile and a half America, which I kind of get, but I don't know. He's such a nice horse. I just don't want them to break him. That's my only issue with him. Obviously, Amo Racing, Kia Joorabchian, they're so hell bent on getting a return on their investment. And it seems like the quickest way is to get a Group 1 with Ancient Egypt, but the more respected route would have been to go through Europe over a mile and a quarter. Probably not an arc because it needs fast ground, and you're probably going to get a wet track, a wet swamp at Paris. That's what usually happens on arc weekend. But just really odd race planning, I think, and I just think you need to break this horse. Toughness only gets you so far, but I just worry that they're going to break him. But I saw some videos of him getting off. It was on Charlie Johnston's social media of him in America, and he looked pretty relaxed. That's the only way he loses this weekend, in my opinion, is if the travel, he doesn't handle the travel very well because he hasn't raced outside of Europe before. But really fascinating horse. I think we might not see him as a 4-year-old because they want to get their stallions in. Although, to be fair, King of Seal, he won the Champion Stakes and he was going to run as a 4-year-old, but I think he got injured or something like that. So, fascinating horse, fascinating faction, Amo Racing. I think they're really good for the sport, mind you. I think it's really fascinating how they spend so much money on these horses. Some of them flop, obviously Poker. What a disaster Poker was. But, obviously Ancient Egypt is a colt that they bought as well for a lot of money, and he's really paid dividends, and I think we're only just sort of scratching the surface with him. But I think I should have gone York Stakes, Irish Champion Stakes, and then could have retired him or brought him back for a strong 4-year-old season. But it'll be interesting to see how this horse goes. As I said, I backed him for this race on the weekend in America. He's the form horse by a very long way. You've got the likes of Servi in there, who is a good European horse, won her last start in America over a mile and a half. Although, these European stays are just built different. Servi is, but I think Ancient Egypt's a much better horse. But this is a bit of a random sort of video. I saw this horse entered for this race and I thought I really want to talk about him and, talk through the race planning, what I think they want to do with him, that sort of thing, and how I could make it better. No, I'm kidding. I'm an idiot. I just like horse racing a little bit. But, if you like this sort of content, like and subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you later.